All right, guys, we're going to get started. Our webinar tonight is on the top 3 mistakes private practice owners are making and how to stop making them. So after 4 years of coaching, this is what we are seeing. So we've been doing coaching for the last 4 years in a lot of different capacities. So here's the ones that I could come up with. So we first started out as hot seat events. So we had our first ever mastermind. We had 8 practices that came down to Orlando. We rented houses and we did a hot seat event. And that's basically you kind of show us your numbers and your practice, and we kind of give you suggestions and put together a plan of what to do based on the numbers that we see. So that was kind of the first thing that we did. And then that kind of expanded out to doing more live and remote coaching. So we do live events as part of our mastermind. But then our practice owners go home and then we do coaching over Zoom, kind of similar to this. So we do weekly coaching calls with people to kind of hold them accountable, make sure that they are understanding all the things they learned at the live events and implementing that in their practice. So that's a lot of that kind of spills over into one-on-one coaching. By far and away, our most successful clients are the ones that do one-on-one coaching. And that's a big part of our mastermind program. And then visiting your practice. So Arlen has actually done this. We did this with George Hess out in Pittsburgh, where Arlen and Kevin flew out there. And Arlen, how were you there for like 2 days?
We were there for a total of 2 days. 2 days.
Yeah. 2 days. So that's pretty cool. Where you kind of have founders go in and kind of watch you in a live setting and observe everything that's going on in your practice. And then of course, have additional coaching attached onto that. And then we have Infusionsoft funnels coaching. So we've done this in the past too, where it's basically Arlen kind of started this with the training that he's had through Infusionsoft and just putting automation into your practice. That's what Infusionsoft is, so that you can get patients that fill up your schedule using different tools and technology to make that happen. So we've done all sorts of different coaching over the last 4 years. And this is kind of what we've learned. There are a lot more similarities and differences in private practice. So in our masterminds, we've had cash practices. We've had one location practices. We've had multi-location practices. We've had, practices doing more than $2 million a year. We've had practices doing, under $300,000 a year. And it was kind of crazy to see how similar the practices were, the problems of which kind of makes sense, right? We're physical therapists. We went to school to learn physical therapy. We're really good at that. But I didn't get a lot of education or any education on how to run a business. And man, it is really hard to run a business if you don't know how to do it and you weren't taught that. So the main areas that practices struggle after doing all this different kinds of coaching is, number one, not knowing your numbers. So what I said to start out was that hot seat event. We would show up and really, if you kind of back up from that, how NLPT really started is the founders met down in Chattanooga and we did our own hot seat event. So we had to kind of come together with all the numbers in our practice. And at that time, man, I didn't know much about metrics. So I'm pretty sure it was Arlen came up with our deck sheet and said, hey, put all your numbers in this spreadsheet. And there were terms in there and there were metrics in there that I didn't even know how to pull from my practice. So I remember like Frank Colley and me probably were one of the weaker groups where we just didn't even know what the numbers were. We just had to kind of put blanks in there. And then we showed up to the event and learned about what that was. And then some other of the practice owners that were there kind of showed us their numbers and we're like, wow, this is really powerful stuff. So knowing your numbers, if you don't know your numbers, we have a hard time helping you because we need to make decisions based on actual data, not just a story of what's going on in your practice. Number two is moving from the operator to the owner. So we're going to talk about this today, but man, it is really hard to do everything you have to do to grow your practice and develop your business if you're still treating full-time. And we've had clients that I've said, I still want to treat full-time. And we say, you can do that, but there's a lot of limitations to that because it takes so much time and effort to put systems into your practice to make it work, that doing that on top of treating a full schedule is really, really tough. And then becoming an executive. So once you go from becoming an operator to an owner, now you have to kind of find out, okay, I'm not treating anymore, but really, how can I get the most out of my time and build the practice that I really want? So those are the 3 areas where we find that most practices kind of struggle with. So let's just go over these a little bit. So knowing your numbers. There's two main categories to me that most practice owners are struggling with, and it's coding and collections and case management. And those might not sound like super interesting topics, but it really is the nuts and bolts of how to run a practice. So most practice owners like, hey man, how can I get more new patients into my practice? That's going to solve all my problems. I'll tell you, you'll find out what the problems are if you shove a bunch of new patients into a practice. We've done that before, but it's not until you figure this stuff out that you have control over your practice. So Arlen, here I'm going to go through coding and collections. So this is like the basic surface level type stuff. This is stuff like if I woke Arlen up tomorrow morning and I said, hey man, what are your units per visit across the board? Like he would know what that number is. And if you don't know what that number is, you don't have awareness around that, then you just don't have as much control over your practice. So units per visit, revenue per visit, over the counter collections. So how much are you collecting like patient responsibilities, 60 plus AR? So how much of your accounts receivable is in your 60 plus bucket? First pass rate, when you send stuff to the insurance company, what percentage gets kicked back automatically? Lost visits due to missed authorizations, contract negotiations, insurance write-offs. All of these topics are a webinar in their own. But Arlen, tell me what having an appreciation and just knowing where you are with these numbers, what does that give to a practice owner?
Oh, I mean, instantly, just peace of mind. There's a lot of leakage that I call that happens in this bucket right here, right? We're always concerned about new patients, right? But when they arrive, coding and collections, there's a lot there that we leak on. And a lot of owners don't realize it. There's a lot lost here. In fact, with their existing cases right now, they're active patients, they probably have enough there to really propel their profitability easily by at least 20%. And a lot of it is in this bucket right here.
Yeah, and this is the financial end of stuff is typically, at least for me and for practice owners I talk to, that's kind of the last thing they worry about, right? So you show up to work, man, if I treat the patients well and I get results, everything's going to be fine. And that's only going to take you so far. At some point, you've got to run a business. I remember when I first started, it was just me. I treated all the patients. I made sure I had staff that actually did billing internally because we were so small. But I didn't even look at what they did. I just kind of treated patients. And then where would I look? I would look in my bank account and I would be like, okay, I've got enough money. When it was just me on payroll, it's pretty easy. I was like, well, whatever's left over at the end of the month, that's kind of what I get. Right. And then once it gets a little more complicated and now you're responsible for other people's salaries and they're going to be looking for you to make payroll, you have to change the way that you think about this stuff. And for the most part, especially smaller private practices, just like we did, we just never kind of looked at it. We just kind of measured by the bank account. I just kind of hoped that the money came in so that we had money to kind of feed our family. And then on the other side, case management, this is more the physical therapy type stuff. This is the stuff that physical therapists should be really good at. And there's obviously some crossover. These things touch each other. But when we look at private practices and we do our first hot seat, so when someone comes into a mastermind, if we have a hot seat event coming up, or if it's the first time that we're talking to them, we kind of hot seat their practice immediately. And we have them fill out this form and they put all these numbers in here. And we want to look at a lot of different numbers, but these are kind of the main ones here. So arrival rate, like that to me, Arlen, when you see someone that has a low arrival rate, what are the first questions that you would ask a practice owner, or what are you worried about?
So typically arrival rate, a lot of owners think it's a front desk stat, but arrival rate is a stat of the whole team. And typically when you have a low arrival rate, are your patients not finding value in the treatments? So this is one of those things that we look at right away. How are we now? The graduation rate is at the bottom here, right? How good are we graduating patients? Because typically, if you have a great graduation rate, I bet your arrival rate is pretty good too.
So like this day, so how long are your patients staying for a plan of care? And a lot of people will say, well, I want as low a length of stay as possible. That means my therapists are being effective. And I will tell you that if you can get a low length of stay and have a very high graduation rate, then there's really nothing that I can say to you. If we have, across the board for us, we're around 16. Every practice is a little bit different. But for me, if I have a clinic that comes in and has a lower length of stay, I'm okay with that as long as they can show me a high graduation rate. Here's the problem. In my practice, when in my different locations, or when I'm working with a practice that's trying to improve their numbers, it's almost never associated with a higher graduation rate. So higher graduation rates are almost always associated with higher length of stay. And that should make sense, right? So, and it's typically not, well, we're just trying to treat a patient as long as we possibly can. If you have a low length of stay, there's a very good chance that you have dropouts. So you got your dropout rate here. So we allow for 1 dropout per clinician per month. So 3.25. Every once in a while, you're going to get a patient you don't connect with, for whatever reason, you just don't hit it off with them, or it doesn't work out. And I'm okay with one, but any more than that, I start to get concerned there. So they're not doing a very good job of really explaining the entire plan of care and explaining the value of physical therapy and the negative effects of not completing their plan of care. So whenever we evaluate this, somebody has a really low length of stay. Yeah, but my therapists are really good. I'm like, okay, well, tell me what your graduation rate is. And then I can tell you if your therapist is really good. And then, okay, if your graduation rate is low, let me see what your dropout rate is. So it's typically not, someone that's if you have a length of stay of 12, you're not seeing like 12, 13, 11, 12. It's like you'll have some higher length of stay with the people that are doing better in terms of graduation rate. And then you'll have a lot of low numbers, like 1, 2, or 3. For us, a dropout, if you come 3 times or less, and you disappear, that's a dropout for us. So there was some kind of miscommunication there. We have systems in place to try to follow up on that, to make sure that we are making sure that we're trying to fix problems immediately when they come in. But if you're not looking at that, then you really don't know. Visit frequency, Arlen, tell me about visit frequency.
Oh, visit frequency again. I think there's a study I think the average is, on average, is 2.3 is our expectation. Now let's even dive deeper into that. There are 3 layers of visit frequency, right? So what's the prescribed visit frequency of your clinicians? You might have clinicians who are prescribing 1 time a week, right? And before you know it, you have patients who cancel during the week. Their visit frequency, their attended visit frequency might not even be 1. So again, visit frequency is super important, because again, the more frequent that patient comes in, usually they have a better graduation rate also, and a better NPS score also. So all of these things are all related. And again, I know Travis will talk about schedule efficiency here too. Starting out with the prescribed visit frequency from your PTs. If they're prescribing 3 times a week, are your patients getting on the schedule 3 times a week? Visit frequency is super important to monitor. We have 3 other metrics behind this visit frequency, but that's a talk for another day.
Yeah, and for visit frequency, if you've never heard that term, you just take the total number of visits that you have in a week, and you divide that number by your total number of active patients. So you've got to know what your active patients are too, which means cleaning up that list. And sometimes when we ask for visit frequency, we'll get some kind of number that's like under 1, and we'll say like, well, how many visits did you do this week? And what's happening is they're not cleaning up their cases. So cases, to me, it is the therapist's number 1 job to have a high graduation rate, which means you have to know where your cases are. So when you get really busy in the clinic, if you don't have systems in place to monitor this, and a patient disappears, typically a therapist is not going to know if they have a lot of different patients. If there's not systems in place to kind of know exactly where each of their patients are, then you're just going to lose that. So unless you're looking at this stuff, it's really easy to kind of lose that number.
And that's where that visit frequency gets hit. A lot of PTs, when you ask your PTs, how many times a week are you prescribing? Let's say you're not tracking that metric. And in your mind, you think your PTs are prescribing 2 to 3 times a week, right? Well, let's say they are. But then your visit frequency is at 1.2 or something like that. And yet your PTs are prescribing 2 to 3 times. Well, most likely, those patients are not on the schedule. If you're not monitoring your active cases, that's where you don't see all of these things. And no wonder your visit frequency is low.
Right. So we talked about dropout rate. NPS score is just, we used to do this like 3-page survey we would give a patient when they were done with physical therapy. It was so annoying. They had to fill all this different stuff out. And it wasn't until I read a book that said there's only really one question you have to ask somebody that is inside your organization, no matter what the organization is. On a scale of 0 to 10, 0, absolutely not. 10, I'm going to tell everybody about you. How likely are you to tell a friend or family member, or recommend a friend or family member to come into our business, no matter what that business is? And we have now exclusively gone to that. So whenever we get someone that is below a 7, then we have to kind of take some kind of corrective action to that. So that's just, it's a way of, quality assurance that you can do. There's lots of different things you can do, but for us, we want to know what that NPS score is. And then Schedule efficiency, Arlen, why don't you talk about what schedule or how you monitor schedule efficiency in your practice and how you use it as a tool to make decisions?
So we have an active patient tracker like all of the NLPT founders do. And we monitor if the PTs on a weekly basis, how many evals did they get and how many times a week did each of those evals get prescribed therapy for. And if each of those evals got prescribed 3 and we got 10 evals, that's 30, are all those 30 visits scheduled out. And now if I'm talking your entire active patients, let's say you have 100 active patients and all of them, let's just say for the purpose of this discussion, they're all prescribed 3 times a week. 100 times 3, that's 300. How many of those 300 visits are on the schedule this week? If it's 270, your schedule efficiency is 90%. But we'd like that obviously to be 100%. I mean, you'll not get to 100% because there are certain times when, some patients cannot come 3 days. They already are canceling in advance, but at least 95 is the target for schedule efficiency. And that's how you do it. You monitor your active patients, the total prescribed visits for all active patients, and how many of all those prescribed visits are on the schedule for the week. That's your schedule efficiency.
Yeah. So that's just kind of an overview of how we use numbers in our practice. Now, all of these break down in further. So if you have multiple locations, you want to know what all these numbers are for all your locations. And there's other numbers that we didn't even go over. But then they break down even further. You want to know what this is by clinician, because you want to know what variance there is between clinicians. And once you have all that stuff figured out, then you can start to make decisions in your practice based on numbers instead of just based on a gut feel. So practices that don't know their numbers, they make decisions with their gut. That's what I used to do, right? I didn't monitor anything. I just said, I don't know. I think this guy's a good therapist. And I remember a time I had a PTA and I started him, and all of a sudden our numbers in our number one clinic just like plummeted. And I was like, wow. I watched the guy treat. I talked to some people that treat him, say, yeah, it's a nice guy. But I didn't know enough to kind of look into the numbers. And after I figured that out, I went back and I had the data and looked at it. And his length of stay for any patient that he ever saw was under 7. So any patient that touched his schedule was like gonna die. So I was just completely lost that patient. And then once we got rid of him, and really, I wasn't even be able to bring him the data. So I just said, you know what, this isn't working out. You came here, it didn't go so well. So we got to cut ties. I wish I could have explained to him what was going on, but it wasn't until now. And now the situation, it really doesn't happen because we are constantly monitoring this stuff, doing one-on-ones with people. They have a scorecard that we hold them accountable to, and we make adjustments based on the scorecard so that we don't making decisions based on your gut. You're just kind of guessing which direction to take your practice. Kind of in that situation that I was, I made a guess. It was a good guess that, I eliminated that therapist because my number shot back up after I got rid of him, but I didn't really have any objective data to make that decision. You have a difficult time evaluating physical therapist performance and quality, right? So a lot of people think physical therapy is, it's very subjective and it's relationship with the patient. All that stuff is important, but you can use objective numbers, which should be pretty straightforward for therapists, right? We have an objective section of the note where we have to kind of show numbers improvement. So, and therapists, as they go through PT school, how are they judged, right? They're judged based on a science degree, which has a lot of numbers in it, and they know where they are in their class ranking. So therapists want this, believe it or not. And if a therapist doesn't want to be held accountable, then they can go find a job somewhere else. But for the most part, especially millennials, if you guys are hiring a lot of millennials, which you are, because that's the biggest section of the workforce, then they want this feedback. They want to know how they're doing. So that helps out there. You can't hold your staff accountable. So if you have a staff that's underperforming or something's not working properly, you can't point to anything that shows why they are doing that. So it makes it really, really difficult. They don't know where to direct their effort, right? So if you say, hey, man, you've got to get better. Even if you have an entry level knowledge, like I remember probably one of the first metrics I ever looked at was arrival rate. I was like, hey guys, we need arrival rate to get better. So we should do that. And I didn't have any tools to show them or even take a deeper dive into that data and try to find out why that was. So if you don't have these numbers that present to them, there's not even anything you can work on. It's so frustrating. There's people working really hard. You don't even know where to focus your effort. And a lot of times I didn't make any decisions. So I would see a problem and be like, I don't even have the information necessary to make a reasonable decision. So sometimes I just did nothing and just kind of hoped it got better. And then you lose your team's trust. So that's what happened. As the leader, I don't know if you guys have ever been in this situation, but when your clinic is not performing well and things are not going well, well, why would I trust the leader of an organization that's not doing that well? And if we don't have objective reasons and we can't bring this information to people to try to course correct, then you're just going to lose confidence in your staff. All right. So the next thing we see is you've got to be moving from an operator to an owner. So if these terms sound familiar, you've probably listened to or read E-Myth by Michael Gerber, but that was one of the first books that I read when I became a business owner. It's like, wow, this makes a ton of sense. But the operator versus the owners is a huge difference. So you're an operator if you're still treating full-time or a partial schedule. If you're doing all the bookkeeping, if you're doing the hiring, firing, if you're involved in some of the marketing or most of the marketing, if you're holding all the meetings in your practice, or worse, if you can't even find time to make meetings, then you're deep in operation. And if you're struggling to grow your business at the speed that you would like. So I don't know that anybody I've ever talked to a practice owner that was never in this situation. Typically, you open up your place, you hang your shingle, you start treating patients, you get to a certain level. And then you start to kind of add different pieces to that. Maybe it's a front desk person. Maybe it's another part-time clinician. That's typically where we see most of the practices that we start somewhere, right around the 100 visits a week. Around 100 visits a week, things start to break because typically the owner cannot see 100 visits in a week. They've got somebody else part-time, but everything still kind of relies on the owner. Like everybody's looking to that owner to make decisions on stuff. And if you're treating all the time, most of your time is kind of buried in treatment in your notes. And if you can't get above that, then it's really difficult to grow your business. So this is just an example of Amy. So she's one of our clients, and Arlen's smiling because we always smile when we talk about Amy, because she said saw such a huge transformation in our program. So she was, right around that level. She was working she's in California, seeing about 138 visits a week. And she's at this point where she was treating a ton. Like, man, she was working. I think I work hard, but I've never seen someone work as hard as Amy. And she loved what she was doing, but it's just at some point you're going to burn out. It's not sustainable. So in our program, she went from 138 visits to 290 visits. So she increased the amount of visits that she's doing, which is always good if you can put other systems in place so that the whole place isn't relying on you. She went from 2 new patients a week to 17 new patients a week. So that's a pretty good jump. She has a lot of ancillary services. So she took her visits from 2 per week to 25 per week. Her total interactions, including PT and wellness. So this is Mike. Mike's awesome. It's her husband, and he's a personal trainer. He's an amazing personal trainer. And they have a personal training end of their business that he runs, and she runs the PT end of it. And he increases his PT and wellness visits from 180 to 400 a week. So this place is growing pretty good. And we went from having the owner working in all the jobs, wearing all the hats, like we talked about, working 80 hours a week, to now she does 0 hours a week of patient care. So it's freed her up so much. And these are her kids here, to spend more time with her kids. And that's really the biggest thing. The biggest thing that I can say about going from doing all the stuff in your business to not doing it is your quality of life improves so much that it has that's the most powerful thing to me in working with clients. I mean, yes, her gross revenue went up 63%. Her net profit went to increase 178%. So she's making more money, but she's more profitable on the money that she's making. That's really important stuff. But really what Amy loves is just being able to spend time with her family and have control over that. So Arlen, tell me about the transition that you made when this happened to you.
Yeah, well, I also wanted to add here, another thing is, if you are planning to sell your practice in maybe the next 5 to 10 years, is a whole lot more valuable to whoever is acquiring you if you are not part of the treating team, if you're exactly an owner and an executive, because they know that thing will run without you treating patients. So yeah, I haven't been treating for 5 years now, 5.5 years now. And so that initial shift from seeing patients and thinking that you're the best therapist, that you're the only one who could really make your patients well, what will happen when your physicians who refer to you, exactly what's going to happen to the practice. The opposite happened with me. Actually, the practice grew even more. And a lot of us saw that because we put systems in place. Now, initially, it was like you feel this guilt of not actually seeing patients, because that's all you've been associated with all your career. You're a clinician, you're a treating clinician. So it's almost like a shift in like how people will perceive you, right? But then over time, like, well, I can actually help more patients not treating by coaching, by being a better head coach to all our clinicians and training them the right way. Then there will be more people, more clinicians who can help more people. So in a way, you are helping more people. But that shift initially is not the easiest from an emotional and mental standpoint. But yeah, you're right. It's your quality of life significantly improves. And one of the things I remember Travis asked me, this was what, 4 years ago when I think it was 5 years ago when I first moved out of treatment. You were, and you have young kids. I have older kids than you do. And Travis was asking me, hey, my kids are, your kids were at this age not so long ago. What would you do differently? And I flat out, and the answer was very easy. I told him I would run a better practice, but I sucked at running a practice back when my kids were super young. Obviously no regrets, right? I mean, it's, you can't cry over spilled milk, but man, if I were completely out of treatment, I would have spent a whole lot more time with my kids too, right? Not that I didn't, but it would have been even better. It would have been more, right? So that's part of that. Yep.
Yeah. So the problem with staying the operator is you're constantly going to hit a ceiling. Like you'll do really well. You get the visits in, get some new patients in, because probably you're driving a lot of the marketing, you're doing all the physician relationship stuff. And then you get busy in the clinic, you got to come back to the clinic and treat everything. And then your efforts in those other places go down, and then you see your numbers go down. And it's this constant roller coaster of what happens. You're going to be chained to your business. Like if you are the main treating clinician and you disappear and try to go on vacation, and we've all done this, where it's like, we used to go on vacation and it's like, yeah, my wife has been saying, you haven't gone on vacation in like 2 or 3 years. We got to do something here because I never see you. And you go away and then you come back to an even bigger mess than what you left when, what was there when you left on vacation. So it almost like, vacations used to give me anxiety. Like I used to like not want to go on them because I knew what would happen when I came back to my practice. So unless you can kind of get out of that, you're going to be stuck in that cycle. And it's really impossible to grow something bigger than yourself. So that's what Arlen was talking about, right? So if I'm a treating clinician, maybe I have one part-time, I could see 100, 130 visits a week, something like that. I'm only going to be able to help a small amount of people. But I always say to my clinicians, to my referral sources that like me, I say, would our community be better if there was more Robbins rehabilitation? And they would say, yes. Okay. So I can't, if I'm going to be, and this is kind of conversations I would have with past patients that would say, hey, I need to see you. I'm only going to see you. I said, in the beginning, I would say, you know what, I'll do the evaluation. Okay. So we'll do the evaluation with my other therapist. You see that therapist. If at any time you feel like you're not getting the care that you think you deserve, then I'll come back and treat you. And never once, I had to do that a lot of times when I was exiting treatment, never once did somebody take me up on that. So now you got to have good clinicians, you got to train them. That takes a lot too. But for the most part, you can't grow something bigger than yourself. Like now my practice is way bigger than me. It runs pretty much, without me. And I've given control to my therapists who really want that, right? They want more responsibility. And the place just runs way better than it was when it was just me running it. And you'll never have an asset to sell. So that Arlen talked about that too. And so we, once you get to a certain size, you start getting approached by private equity. And right now is a really good time to sell. I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon, but we get frequent communication with private equity, say, hey, we would love to buy your practice. Well, if private equity is coming to you and you're the main driver in there, if you get hit by a bus, like this practice, poof, disappears. And they don't like to see that. They want to see a practice that's running efficiently without the owner having to treat. It's one of the big things that they look for, because it's just a reflection of a lot of other things. If you don't have to treat in your practice, then you have systems in place that almost by definition say that the practice is a really good practice. So that's really important when you're thinking about having an asset to sell. Last thing is becoming an executive. All right. So we've gone from operator to executive, and that's great, but you got to be good at that. And that's typically like showing up to a brand new job that you've never been trained at before. So I'm going to tell you about my first day as a true executive. So I got up early. I got my kids lunch and breakfast, and I got them on the bus. This is when they were really little. And that was a really big deal, because I remember getting up and my kids were like, what are you doing here? Because typically it was my wife that did that, because she was home with the kids and did all that stuff. So I was pretty excited about that. And then I get to work, and it's like from 8:30 to 9, I drive to work. 9 to 10, I stared at the walls. Like I've never been less productive than I was. And it was like I was frozen in time. And I would like look at the clock, and I was in the back room, and I could hear treatment up there. And I took everything from me. I almost had to lock the door from the other side to not go out there, because that's where I was really comfortable, right? That's where I had been for, 15 years. That's what I did. And so I called Kevin and Arlen. I said, like, what am I supposed to do here? And so they kind of said, hey, I remember Kevin said, it's going to take about 3 months before you can figure out what, what you're going to do. So just give yourself some time. And I really appreciate that he said that, because, man, I felt terrible after the first day. I was like, oh my God, I was useless. At least before, I could use my hands and treat patients and bring revenue. And I sat in the back and didn't even bring any revenue. And like, what was going on? And that's what we've been working on since I got out of treatment, right? That's all I work on. I work on becoming a better executive. And Arlen, tell me about that, because I remember we were at a live event and we were sitting around. I think George Hess was there. We're sitting at the table, and Arlen's like, if I want to have a $10 million practice, I've got to become a $10 million CEO. And here's the problem. I need to become a $10 million CEO way before we're doing 10 million in revenue. Because if I don't, I'll never get there. So tell me about that, Arlen.
And that's where you need the time that you have now, if you're not treating, to really continue to grow yourself, right? And we're never gonna get done growing, because if you don't grow, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So, but talking about being a true executive, how do you get to be that $10 million executive from being, let's say, a $5 million executive? You can't be the same person. And that's where you need to use this valuable time where you're not treating. You need to structure it. And there is a way, and we'll show you how we do that. But you're right. I mean, even when I first got out, the common mistake that owners will make here, they get out, right? They're completely out of treatment, but they feel lost. It's like, wow, I've been treating all this time. And this is when most owners get sucked back into treating, because it's something comfortable to go back to. They get back into the whirlwind of the everyday stuff in the clinic. And that's where you need to be careful when you first step out. You need to structure your day and your week so you can make that as effective as your time as possible, to get you to that $10 million executive from being a $5 million executive.
Yeah. So another way to think about it is, sometimes those numbers are hard to comprehend. But if you just take visits, every physical therapist knows visits, right? So let's say you're doing 100, 200 visits a week. Frank Cawley just told me he broke his record recently. He did almost 1,200 visits a week. So think about the skill set that you have to have in order to run. Like if we put you in charge of a practice that was doing 1,200 visits a week, and you're currently doing 200 visits a week, you just don't have the skill set there. And sometimes you don't even know where to find that, but it's possible, right? So there's people that are doing it. So it's definitely possible. There's locations that are doing 3,000 visits a week, 10,000 visits a week. And there's executives that are running those organizations, and they're running really well. So it's possible. So how did they figure it out, or how did they develop the skills to do that? That's what you have to kind of find out, and kind of setting your goals and where you want to be. Maybe you don't want to have a practice that's $10 million. That's fine. It doesn't mean that because I do and you don't, that I'm better or than you, you're better than me. It's just kind of setting where you want to get to. So what does an executive do? So there's 3 things they really do. They build systems, they develop a team, and they hold people accountable. And again, these skills are not developed by treating patients all day. It's just really hard to do. So building systems of operational efficiency and financial performance. So again, that's what we talked about earlier about kind of growing up as a business owner. If you're just going to be, one man, one woman show, you really don't have to develop these things. You're really good at treating patients. You'll build a reputation, and the practice will just rely on you solely. And if that's what you want to do, I think that's great. I think we need practices like that for sure. But if that's not what you want to do, if you want more in terms of ownership of your time and building an asset that you can actually sell when you're done, then you're going to have to develop this stuff and coaching, really. I mean, that's where I spend most of my time. I used to think or have the understanding that my product was physical therapy. And here's the truth. You can go anywhere and get physical therapy. Like if they wipe physical therapy, if something happens to me and my practice goes there's not going to be people crying in the streets like, oh, there's nowhere to get physical therapy. There's tons of places to get physical therapy. Well, my product is my people. So I've got to develop my people, and that's where I win. So that's when people come into your practice, and this, like people say, oh my God, this is like so much better or different than other places I've gone for physical therapy. What do you do here? If you're the only person that does that, you can do that, but you'll never have the impact that you can have if you don't grow and expand your business and holding people accountable. So it is, man, it's a really tough transition going from like peer to peer. So when I was, and if you're in this situation, if you're an owner and you're treating patients, it's just a different relationship that you have with your staff, with your clinical staff. They kind of see you as an equal, which is great. And then when you go from treating clinicians to executive, and all of a sudden you're coaching and you're holding them accountable to stuff after you've learned what metrics to hold them accountable to and the systems to do that, it's a difficult transition to do that. But with, people, again, everybody has done this. So this has been done before. We're not inventing anything new. We're just kind of showing you how to do it and making the road a little less rocky as you do it. So you have options, right? You can continue as is and hope that you figure this out on your own. I don't know anybody that's done that. I have never talked to practice owners that are our size, larger than us. For me, I'm trying to build to 10 locations, and that's kind of the number that I've set. I'm not going to figure out how to do that unless I'm hanging out with people that have more locations than me, or some, amount of your time. It was this kind of philosophy is where you should spend 30% of your time with people that are at your level, because you can kind of work with them peer to peer. You should spend 30% of your time with people above your level, because you got to know what you're getting into, and if you want to get into that. And you got to spend 30% of your time with people that are a little bit behind you, because you want to help bring them up. So that's kind of what we do. But man, I don't know, Arlen. I mean, I've never talked to a private practice owner that has grown the practice to where they want it to. Or it's like, yep, I've never gotten any coaching. I've never talked to any other private practice owners. I've never gotten coaching from anywhere. But
That's the crazy thing, bro. So I opened my practice in 2003. Never grew until 2012. In fact, in 2011, I almost sold my practice, closed it actually. Not, I mean, it would have sold for nothing. Obviously, nobody would probably even want it back then. And not until I actually got on some business coaching. It's all the same stories. I mean, all of us founders. I mean, it's crazy how that is. But when you look back and boy, I wish I had a coach back in 2003 when I opened. It would have been right. But again, here we are. Yep. We always have options.
So you can continue as is and hope that you figure it out on your own. I haven't met anybody that's done it, but maybe you're the person. So you can continue to do that, or you can get help, which is, I do coaching like that as part of my profession. Is I'm a professional consultant that helps out private practice owners. I don't know very much about private practice, except that I know that if you want to learn something or go somewhere, you got to find someone that's already there, that's done it. It'll make everything so much easier. So now I try to seek out people that are where I want to get to, and I want to learn from them in a formal or informal capacity, whatever that is. So for us, I mean, this is how we do it. This is how we help people. And you guys have probably seen this in Basecamp. I put a post here, but this kind of explains what working with us will look like. So we've done this a couple different times in terms of like a couple different cohorts that we've done. And we typically like the size of 10. That's a really good number for us in terms of people that we like to work with. But this is the first time we've opened up coaching since before the pandemic. And I don't know when this is going to open up again. So we've got 10 spots available for our coaching program. And what you guys get to benefit from is that we've kind of broken all the eggs to make the omelet. Like we've tried a bunch of different stuff. We've worked with a ton of different practices, and now we've condensed that into this mastermind program that is the best product that we have to try to help people out. So, our coaching clients, there's the success stories that are in here that you can read. We talked about Amy, but the things that we're probably most proud of is regularly taking 2-week vacations and hitting record visits on vacation. So this is this weird milestone that happens, and it happened with the founders when it was just us and we just kind of met together. Someone would go away on vacation. We'd have a picture of Lee in Cabo, and he'd be like, yep, I'm on the beach and I just hit record visits. When you're on vacation and your practice hits record visits, that's like a milestone that you hit a gap that we're starting to figure some stuff out. Doubling the size of your practice in a year, that seems kind of ridiculous. But we've had practices, certainly founders that have done that, and our clients that have done it, hitting our 3-year goals in 6 months. So we have a part of our program where I tell you to write your 10-year vision. I've got a whole program that goes through that and kind of where you want to be. And we had a client recently that said, yeah, I've been working with you guys for 6 months and I'm already up to my 3-year goals. So I think I might have to adjust my sights on what that is, but that's definitely exciting. You know, open up multiple clinics in a year. Removing yourselves from treatment. We talked about that a ton today, how important that is. So you can start working, you know, on your business instead of in it. Increasing revenue by $45 a visit. So that's not typical results, but we've never worked with a client that didn't increase their revenue per visit. You say, well, hey man, I get paid what I get paid. Like the insurance company set that. Not always. And it's not about contract negotiation either. That is helpful. And we've definitely had some clients that we've helped out with that, but it's really more systems around billing and collections. And we went through some of the systems and the metrics that we went. There's kind of just a quick look at that. But man, that's one of the huge mistakes. I mean, I would outsource my billing and I abdicated it. So there's abdication and delegation. If you guys have read anything about that, I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't know anything about it. So I just said, here, you take care of it. And man, that lost me. I had someone that was outsourced that was really kind of a business partner of mine for 15 years and like millions of dollars that we lost because I just never looked at how good of a job they were doing. I didn't know how to evaluate it because I didn't know my numbers. But when you know your numbers and you have power there, for sure, you can get more revenue per visit just by kind of running through our systems. So this is Aaron. Aaron and Joe are up in Albany. This funny story. They actually treat like my wife's side of the family because we're from the same town. They've seen like 7 or 8 of my family members. But husband and wife, little kids, and man, they were in our original coaching program and now they've graduated. They're alumni now, but they're just doing an amazing job of running a practice in a state that is very difficult to run a practice and be profitable. Their reimbursement is the lowest in the country. No one's got lower reimbursement for them, but they have an amazing team that they've built and they've had some really big milestones. So you should read about her. And then this just kind of goes into all the different things. I'm not going to sit here and just kind of read this off to you, but Arlen, in this program, when we've done coaching in the past, where have you seen, what is the most important thing that people need to know about this mastermind program?
To me, the 3, if I were picking 3 most powerful stuff here, is that practice analysis and battle plan. We analyze deeply how your practice is doing, that 30-minute one-on-one call and that hot seat event, that in-person mastermind hot seat is powerful. I mean, the Infusionsoft funnels are a plus. It's a bonus, right? The free tickets to the live events are a plus. But the main 3 things is the 30-minute one-on-one call every week, the practice analysis, and the hot seat event. It's a way to hold you accountable, to make sure that you are performing as well as you should be as the CEO of your practice. It's a way to getting you the personal growth that you should be undertaking so you could be that person who leads your business to the next level. Those 3 important things, I think, the most powerful things in this program, I think.
Yeah, and this is the stuff people love. Like, okay, how am I going to pay for this program? Well, we give you Infusionsoft funnels and they're easily going to pay for the program. So these are automation sequences that you have access to that you can run in your practice. You can run them to past patients. That's where we get a majority of our patients is from people that already know, like, and trust us. So we just run Infusionsoft campaigns to them to bring them back in and reactivate cases. We have cold audience funnels. We have other funnels that just patient retention, right? So Arlen talked in the beginning about a lot of people say, hey, can I get some more new patients in here? Well, are you making sure that you're treating the patients that you currently have and getting the most out of them, increasing their length of stay, which is associated with a higher graduation rate, better patient outcomes? So that has to happen. Anything about the Infusionsoft stuff you want to talk about?
I think here, right? You guys might be looking at this 24,000 value. You know what? We sold these funnels back in 2018. We have 10 owners who actually bought this $24,000 package. And now this is a bonus as part of the mastermind group. It's crazy. It's powerful. There are over 30 funnels in there. And it pretty much takes automation in your practice to the next level. It's plug and play. So you work with our Infusionsoft Ninja. And you don't have to pay for Infusionsoft app fees either. It's all built into one. This is crazy. Right.
Yep. So we run these campaigns and it's easily in a month, you can generate 10, 15, $25,000 in revenue from patients that you wouldn't have gotten just by doing the Infusionsoft. So a couple of things people say, no, Infusionsoft is really complicated. Well, guess what? We coach you on how to use it. So we have our Infusionsoft coach that's on our staff that teaches you how to use it. Infusionsoft is expensive. We take care of it. You're on our app. So we have an agreement with Infusionsoft that we can put people on our app. You have access to all of our funnels that you can use. So we train you and we take care of the expense of it, and it's going to pay for the program on its own. So this is happening quickly. But if you're ready to go right now, then what we need to do is get you signed up. There's only 10 slots available, right? And we've got one taken already in calls that we've done this week. But if you want to kind of accelerate this, what we can do is we're starting the program in January, but we can get you started like this week. So if you want to get started faster, then you can do that. Now you can get a free month of coaching. So we're going to coach you through December. And why that's important is it's going to get you ready for next year. So we're going to do coaching that with you. We're going to get you lined up with your Infusionsoft coaching, so that you have to get on with Abe and do a couple calls with him so you understand how Infusionsoft works. So you get these campaigns rolling immediately so that you have a great start to the beginning of 2022. And for us, I don't know about you, Arlen, but it used to be, man, I would dread January because it was like, man, it's going to be slow. No one wants to come in for physical therapy. They got these huge deductibles, right? So now our goal every year is we try to make January our biggest month. We put together a lot of these Infusionsoft campaigns. We put together mail campaigns that we do to our past patients because they love to get stuff in the mail. That's a great place to compete for people's attention.
That new year funnel in here, bro, that's powerful. It sets you right away. The first Tuesday of the year, you usually easily get 30 new patients right off the bat.
Yeah, I remember the first year I ran it, we got 50 new patients from that program. And you guys are 30 new patients. You can't do that. You can't get 50 new patients. You can if you're communicating with them. So a lot of that has to do with the automation and the different things that we do. But if you want to have a huge January, then you should jump on this quickly because we can coach you through that and teach you guys how to do that. And we can pay for the program in January. So it's just, this just kind of goes through the other features of it. Here's Bo. Bo's awesome. So he's my coaching client. And he made huge jumps in his practice. He's got little kids. And for me, when I work with clients that have little kids, my job is to make sure that they have enough time to spend with them, because when that time is gone, it's gone. You get 18 summers with your kids and that's it. So for me, it's really big. And these are two clients that I've worked with that I love, that so I can get them more time with their family. So yeah, and we don't have long-term contracts. I mean, obviously with this kind of investing, you're probably gonna want to get on a call with us. So we're going to have a link in the chat here, and then we're going to repost this in Facebook too. So we'll have links there to get on calls if you have questions about what's involved, what's going to be your commitment, what we're committing for you, then you want to get on calls with us to kind of explain this. This will give you a good idea of what is going on, but you're probably going to want to get on a call with us for further explanation. And we've got to see if it's a fit for you too. Like, we've got to make sure that the program is right for you. So we've got to get on that. We don't, it's some frequently asked questions. So there is advantages to paying for it up front before the end of the year. So you can take the tax advantage of that if you've got some extra profit left over in your practice and you don't want to pay taxes on it, and you're committed to making 2022 the best year you've ever had, then it's a good idea to try to pay for the whole thing up front. And guess what? You get 2 months for free if you do that. If you commit to us for the next year, then we're going to give you 2 months for free. So that's really important. We don't do long-term contracts. We've got to earn your trust every month. So we never do that. We never like companies that did that. Mastermind different than individual coaching. I think that's really important too. So when we do the events, and I'm really looking forward to our next live event because we haven't done one in so long. Those events are so powerful. It is, you're learning from founders that are, running practices that are successful, that are where you want to get to. But a lot of the individual owners that are in the program, just building the relationships with them, and just, I remember being, when I first started out, I just felt so alone. Like, I didn't even talk to other private practice owners. And I just kind of figured, I was, like Arlen said, I sucked at running a practice. Like, I tried really hard, but I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I just kind of figured everybody was that way. And it wasn't until I met these guys that I found that there's a different way. And just the feeling of knowing that you're taking this journey with other people that are like-minded and doing that, I think is really important. And the hot seat event, that's where we break down your practice, and it's uncomfortable. We ask you a lot of questions about why numbers are where they're at, but it's all in the spirit of helping you build the practice that you want to build. If you can't attend the live events, I mean, we really encourage that. But if that's something that doesn't work out for you for travel reasons or whatever, then we'll just kind of zoom you in and you can participate in that for sure. Weekly coaching calls. I mean, these are just kind of the weekly, 7-day action items. So when I get on coaching calls with my clients, I'm like, okay, where are the numbers at? What actions do we need to take to improve numbers that are not where we want to be? And can you commit to that for the next 7 days? So I'm gonna hold you accountable to that next time we get on a call. Sound good? Great. Okay. So they're quick 30-minute coaching calls to kind of help you navigate. And if there's like, huge issues that come up in your practice that week, then obviously we can go over them at that point. And then increasing revenue. We talked about that. It doesn't seem possible, but it is if you can put systems in your practice. And then extra, these are bonuses. So we put the value of this is $1.2 million. That might seem a little bit ridiculous, but these are 100K calls. So we've been doing these with our current mastermind clients, and we do typically 1-hour calls where we'll break down something specific in your business, a system that you've got to put into your business. Sometimes we'll bring other people on that are experts in that area that will help you out with that. To this point, only the mastermind clients that we have right now have had access to that. But if you join now, we're going to give you access to this stuff. So referral tracking, like knowing exactly where your new patients are coming in, clinical director training. So you remove yourself from treatment, but you've got to train someone to do the job that you used to do. Do you have systems for that? Well, we have them built out for you. Marketing calendar masterclass. If you don't have a marketing calendar for 2022, if you watch this video, man, you'll be way ahead of where you were last year. And just having a marketing calendar to have consistent results in your marketing division is really, really important. Running consult events. So a lot of the Infusionsoft funnels that we run involve consult events. And that's how we just get automatically patients in our practice every month that we can count on. So that's really powerful to do. Annual strategic planning. We're coming up on that now with our mastermind clients. We actually have a call next Tuesday that Lee is leading. I think Arlen is in on that to try to make sure that you guys are set up to do your annual strategic planning. And if that's like, hey man, I'm just trying to treat patients and make payroll, I don't have time for annual strategic planning. I would argue that if that's you, then you need our annual strategic planning more than anybody else. So company culture, that's a cool call that Joe and Aaron did. So graduates of our program that they came on and did a call because they have such an amazing culture in their practice that they gave a teaching on that. So there's tons of extra stuff in here, extra trainings that you guys can do. If you feel like this is something that you're interested in, if you're ready to make next year the best year of your practice, then get some help and get it from us, because we've got 10 slots available. Hey, it's Amy. Amy jumped on. So I didn't even ask her to come on. I felt bad. I thought she was getting the kids down to bed. Well, it's kind of early over there yet, but Amy's here. She's one of our past coaching clients that we talked about earlier in the call. So she's doing amazing. Amy, do you want to say anything, or are you out? Were you up by the pool? Where are you?
No, I am at home. I live in the COVID life right now, my friend. My whole family's got coronavirus, so we're just chilling.
Oh,
But what's awesome is that, like, you guys, I'm giving a little shout out. You guys are the reason I can be at home with my family and my business still runs. So I appreciate all y'all. It's just like the best. So I saw the little like message and I was like, I gotta jump on this. I gotta see what they're doing.
All right. Thanks, Amy. All right, guys, that's it. I'm going to repost this in the Facebook group. If you guys have questions about the program and you want some of those answered, then you just got to get on a call with us. Remember, we only got 10 slots available, 9 now because one got taken. So if you guys want to take your practice to the next level this year, then get on a call with us and learn how you can learn from the founders of NLPT. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night, and we'll see you at the top.
Do it, y'all.